Hello, this video is on the Nakshatra of Hasta. Hasta is one of the most auspicious sections of the sky, and you'll find that out very soon. As per mythology, it's ruled by Lord Savitar, and this Nakshatra falls entirely in the sign of Virgo. As usual, I'm going to be sharing the mythology linked to Lord Savitar first, and then I'll be explaining how different planets behave in Hasta. Lord Savitar is known to have his arms wide open for anyone who seeks his blessings. That is how he's characterized. And you'll find this interesting, that the most sacred mantra, the Gayatri Mantra, is dedicated to him. So let's talk about that first. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna mentioned amongst the mantras, he represents the Gayatri Mantra, such as the divinity of this mantra. The Gayatri Mantra is as follows: Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. The word Savitar there in the Gayatri Mantra is representing Lord Savitar, who's ruling this section of the sky. Now, the Gayatri Mantra translates to, may we attain the excellent glory of Lord Savitar, so he may stimulate our prayers. Stimulation has another translation. We choose the supreme light of the divine sun. We aspire that it may impel our minds. Stimulation, impelling of the mind, is symbolic of what Lord Savitar is all about and what this Nakshatra is all about. Lord Savitar has the capability to purify our minds, our intellect, so we think more logically, clearly, elevatedly. And this can even translate to enlightenment and awakening. With a purified mind and intellect, this also leads to truthfulness in speech. And you'd find this interesting, the planet signifying speech, Mercury, is exalted in this section of the sky. This stimulation of the mind, awakening and even enlightenment is linked to Lord Savitar, which can also be explained by the role Lord Savitar is playing in our lives. Lord Savitar represents the divine rays of sun, the time between dawn and dusk. That's the time when we pull ourselves together, we are determined to get our daily activities done. Like today, I'm recording this video during daytime. I was determined I had to do it today. That determination, that motivation comes from this section of the sky. His blessings help us achieve our targets. So this Nakshatra is also about motivation and feeling inspired. Not only Lord Savitar is stimulating our minds and preparing us for our daily activities, Lord Savitar is also making sure that we return home after accomplishing our daily duties. Lord Savitar, with his blessings, can even awaken us on a spiritual plane. So this Nakshatra is very strongly linked to divinity and has the Gana belonging to a divine force. Lord Savitar is known to be the most skillful of all gods. As per mythology, it is said his hands are made of gold, which is symbolic of his ability and thereby the Hasta native's ability to create things which are created flawlessly, accurately, precisely. So you can say it's a creative section of the sky, but here creativity lies in precision. Creativity lies in accuracy. Therefore, the Hasta native is likely to have unparalleled technical skills. Any job that requires skills. Industries keep going through cycles, but skills are permanent. Skills stay with you. And so this Nakshatra is all about attaining those skills. If you have Hasta strong influence in your chart, follow a career built on the basis of your skill. Now this nakshatra is classified as having the nature belonging to Shipra, which translates to quick movement. Here, quickness in how you do things through your hands. Manual dexterity in some professions is required. It can be a job of a carpenter to something more glamorous like playing tennis. And you'd find this interesting. Roger Federer in his birth chart has Saturn and Jupiter, Saturn specifically in Hasta, which in my view is behind his technical prowess on the tennis field. The hands made from gold of Lord Savitar is also symbolic of the Hasta native's ability to have one's destiny in one's own hands. That is also known as the power, the Shakti of this nakshatra. The person is, the native is going to be self-made and would have the capability to do what one wants to do by oneself. Now in this illustration I am sharing a few examples. The first one symbolizing having one's destiny in one's own hands. The next couple of them are to do with quick movement, symbolized by a table tennis player or a sprinter. The last one perhaps might be counterintuitive. I'd mentioned Mercury is exalted in this section of the sky. And so the Hasta native is going to show the best of Mercury in one's character. So the native can be an excellent writer, a poet, a composer, can even be a stand-up comedian. And since this nakshatra is about the use of hands, and Mercury symbolizes communication skills, the person can even become an expert at sign language. Let's look at Hasta's classification. I have already mentioned it belongs to the nature of Shipra. As far as temperament is concerned, Gana is concerned, it belongs to a divine force, Deva. This nakshatra is all about divinity. The Gayatri Mantra is dedicated to the ruler of this nakshatra. Therefore, it makes perfect sense that it has this classification. This nakshatra further belongs to the caste of a merchant, and that's not surprising. Mercury being exalted in this section of the sky, and Mercury belonging to the caste of a merchant justifies this classification. And lastly, it has the guna belonging to Rajasic. Rajasic translates to worldly. This nakshatra is about achieving things of the world. In business, you are always chasing targets. So many customers, such revenue for this quarter. So it's a very driven nakshatra. You're trying to increase your wealth, your influence. It's a very business-related section of the sky. Here, business and divinity are coming together, which can translate to a healing business, which is a great example. Why healing? Now that's the big question. You'd find this interesting that this nakshatra is ruled by moon. All industries linked to the healing sector are moon linked. Now why would moon be the ruler of this section of the sky? If we go back to the Gayatri Mantra, it is said, one who recites the Gayatri Mantra remains uninjured even in the worst calamity. So this nakshatra is a lot about, due to its association with the Gayatri Mantra and Lord Savitar, this nakshatra is a lot about safety and protection. Returning home safely is directly linked to this section of the sky, and therefore moon is its ruler. I'd like to share a few examples. Mahatma Gandhi, he has his rising nakshatra as Hasta. Sun also incidentally is in the same nakshatra. So the aspect of this nakshatra of being an inspiration to people is seen in his life, to motivate people, to stimulate the minds of people and inspire them to action. That is reflected by this Hasta's influence in his chart in my view. Another great example is Swami Vivekananda. In his chart I found Moon and Saturn in Hasta. And if the time of birth was correct, then I found this Moon and Saturn's presence in his career house. Not only was he a spiritual and a religious leader, his work was also closely linked to social welfare. That is a very Moon-Saturn related activity. Particularly in his case, I find Moon and Saturn in conjunction in this section of the sky. And lastly, an interesting example, Pablo Picasso. I'd mentioned this nakshatra is known to create objects which are flawless. The design capability of this nakshatra is unparalleled, and that is witnessed in the life of Pablo Picasso, who has Venus in Hasta. That, in my view, is behind his creativity. So if you have your rising as Hasta, you're likely to be a source of inspiration to people around you, and you'll naturally have that dependability. People would rely on you to accomplish the task assigned to you. If we go back to Lord Savitar, he is known to never compete with other gods, and therefore you are likely to be not unnecessarily caught up in competition. Like we hear stories that I did that because I felt I had to be better than that person. That unnecessary competitiveness may not be part of your character. So I mean it in a good way. Other than that, I have some keywords I had identified. The person is likely to be good looking. That's due to Moon's rulership. Innocent, righteous, kind, gentle, soft-spoken, Mercury being exalted in this section of the sky. Honesty, honest person, spiritually inclined, self-made, having one's destiny in one's own hands. And lastly, loved by all, and that's due to Lord Savitar's rulership. A lot would also depend on the sign Hasta falls in the Navamsha chart, and there would be the first four signs: Aries, Taurus, Gemini and Cancer. So if it's the sign of Aries, that determined side, that self-made side, and the side linked to this nakshatra to do with technical prowess would be more visible in the native. If it's the sign of Taurus, the native would be driven by worldly desires. The Rajasic side linked to this nakshatra would be more visible. If it's the sign of Gemini, this nakshatra, as it mentioned, has Mercury exalted in it, and therefore communication skills might become one of your prime assets. You might be known for how you converse, the ease of which you converse, and how comfortable you make others around you, as this nakshatra's planetary ruler is Moon. And lastly, if it's the sign of Cancer, the maternal side, so strongly linked to this nakshatra, the dependability side linked to this nakshatra would be seen in your character. So, Moon, Mercury, which are the nakshatra and the sign ruler, and the sign ruler in the Navamsha together would describe how a planet might behave in Hasta, but studying a planet's position in Hasta in isolation is an excellent start, so let's do that. If Moon is there in Hasta, think you have the ability to inspire people around you with your thinking. And the maternal side, so strongly linked to Hasta, would also be seen in your character. People would find you as dependable. You may also be very service-oriented. Kindness, sensitivity are also likely to be part of your character. And the mentality you're likely to carry would be to make yourself self-dependent. The way of thinking would be such that, no, I'm determined to succeed, I'm determined to rise by my own self. I think you'll have the ability to understand complicated problems easily, quickly. This nakshatra has the nature belonging to Shipra, You are likely to be spiritually inclined. This sensitivity in your character can also lead to you feeling that you have to do something for yourself, for your soul, for example. So you might turn religious and spiritual, wanting to do the right thing, and a natural innocence might also be behind your way of thinking. Moon belongs to the caste of a merchant, and so the native might start a healing business if Moon is directly linked to one of the career-related houses, and that healing can be through herbs, as Moon is considered to be the lord of herbs. Altogether, this is a strong position. The only downside I see here is Moon is directly linked to royalty, and this nakshatra is Rajasic, so the person can get caught up in the idea of building a personal identity in the world. Other than that, I find this position to be very strong. When Sun is in Hasta, your leadership is likely to be an inspiration for people around you. I had mentioned Lord Savitar represents the time between dawn and dusk, and Sun represents the sun. So here, whatever you're likely to do, your work is likely to shine through. The example I had shared with you earlier was of Mahatma Gandhi. He was known for his work. His work shone through. Hasta is very strongly linked to honesty, and Sun is all about nobility and consistency. Together, this can lead to the native being very reliable, very trustworthy. Mercury is exalted here, and when Sun is here, together this can lead to the native being very intelligent. Think the intelligence is also likely to shine through in your character. Hasta falls entirely in the side of Virgo, and Virgo is directly linked to public service, and Sun is belonging to the caste of a Kshatriya. So together this can lead to you occupying a position of a leader in public service in the society. This can even lead to business leadership. Let's not forget, Hasta belongs to the caste of a merchant, but your business might be such that people not only see you as a business leader, they also see you as a public leader. Your business has a message. Running a business based on ethics and inspiring people to follow your path is likely to be part of your journey. Sun is known to eradicate diseases, and therefore this combination of Sun Hasta can lead to a career in medicine, particularly if Moon's position, which is the Nakshatra ruler, also is suggesting a career in medicine. Altogether, I find you to be not only self-made, but an individual who might inspire others to also follow your path. You might stimulate others, you may inspire others to follow your path. So your journey in life, from being self-made to now a position of a leader in the society, through that journey you might inspire many people. I don't see any major downsides to this position. This is a very, very strong position. Mercury in Hasta, as you'd intuitively understand, is a very, very strong position. All Mercury qualities would be seen in your character. Intelligence, analytical ability, the ability to converse effectively, succinctly. So you'd be an excellent storyteller, and this can even lead to a career in business advisory, financial consultancy, or even sales and marketing. This position, very importantly, signifies a business person, a salesperson. You'd understand how to run a business. This nakshatra is all about doing things honestly, and Mercury here represents the caste of a merchant, and so does this nakshatra. So running a business ethically, morally, winning the trust of your clients, you'll know how to do that. And since this nakshatra's planetary ruler is Moon, a healing business which is a provider of comfort, a product or a service which is such, you have the ability to inspire people around you with your intellect, your reasoning ability. Mercury finds itself to be very, very strong here. The Shipra nature would also be seen in your thinking, the ability to understand complicated problems quickly, the ability to solve difficult issues quickly. With this position, you'd also be able to fulfill your aspirations in the world, the guna of Rajasic. You'd be able to fulfill your business ambitions. Altogether, I find this position to be very strong. I hardly see any downside to this position. When Venus is in Hasta, I find that you'll have the ability to inspire people to come together for a cause. Venus is all about togetherness, coming together of people, and Hasta is about inspiration. So Venus, Hasta together, particularly if Moon is favorably placed, can lead to you being a social worker, for example, bringing people together, stimulating, inspiring their minds to come together for a social cause. In love affairs, you might believe in doing acts of service, and you might expect your partner to be similar. You are likely to be very practical and analytical even in love, and you'd like to build your personal life, your relationship and marriage by your own self. So you can say, I worked on this relationship, I have built this relationship. The only downside with this position is that you can be a seeker of perfection. This nakshatra, as I mentioned, is a lot about doing things perfectly, flawlessly, and you might have that unrealistic, impractical expectation from your partner. In anything that you do which is creative in nature, your creations are going to be extraordinary. They are going to be an inspiration, and they are going to be created perfectly, accurately, precisely. Cubism, the design pattern popularized by Pablo Picasso, he has Venus in Hasta. That's the point I'm trying to make. So creations have some unique detail behind it. Something beautiful has been built by putting things together artistically. And the other example is the job of a carpenter. A beautiful piece of furniture is put together by a carpenter. So creativity and technical skills, they come together with this position. This position can lead to your future being in financial services sector, financial advisory sector. Venus signifies money. So if Venus in Hasta is directly linked to your career, that also is a possibility. Venus is a pleasure-seeking planet, and this nakshatra is Rajasic. So the native can be caught up in the idea of building a personal brand, achieving things in the world, running after fame, running after money, and that, in my view, is one of the downsides to this position, and perhaps the only downside I can see. Mars in Hasta makes for someone who has unparalleled technical skills. Anything that requires the skill of hands, you are going to be the best at it. So pick up carpentry, or pick up tennis, or pick up painting, anything which requires the use of hands. There isn't going to be someone better than you in that. It can even lead to a career in medical science, in surgery. Surgical operations require that skill of hands. That is the first thing that occurs to me when I look at Mars's position in Hasta. The other aspect is Mars is fiercely independent and very self-motivated, and Hasta is all about having one's future in one's own hands, and therefore the native would have this strong desire to achieve independence. The native would be determined to achieve one's goals by one's own self. Like we hear stories that the person had no help from anyone, but the person was determined and the person achieved one's goals. Like the boxer who has no support from one's family but is willing to continue to fight to achieve one's goals in life. That level of determination, fighting against all odds, is going to be part of your character if you have Mars in Hasta. Mars is known to take risks and is very entrepreneurial, and combined with this nakshatra, this can lead to you being behind technical innovations of some kind. You might be driven by a goal. This nakshatra's guna is rajasic, and this entrepreneurial spirit together and this technical prowess linked to Hasta together can lead to innovation. Your creations, your innovations are going to be technically very sound and extremely inspirational to people, like the design of an iPhone or the design of the umbrella. Such designs, they act as an inspiration. Others follow their lead, they follow their example. That this has been designed like this is now the industry standard, we need to meet that standard. So you set standards, particularly in the manufacturing sector. That sector is directly linked to Mars. Mars, however, despite being very self-motivated, isn't a great team player. And given this nakshatra's rajasic nature, together this can lead to the native being excessively competitive. Even though this nakshatra is not about competing, when Mars is there, that is likely to be seen in your character. You are fighting over small things, you're fighting over small details. And lastly, everything you're going to do it quickly. And perhaps you would want to be in a profession which requires quick movement, like playing hockey. You have to respond quickly, or tennis, or table tennis. Quick movement and that restlessness is also going to be part of your character. That's my view of Mars in Hasta. When Jupiter is in Hasta, you have the capability to inspire people with your knowledge. Religious leaders, spiritual gurus, professors, industry experts, people who are known to be the main speakers in conferences, I believe have Jupiter in Hasta. You'd always naturally be inclined towards the philosophical meaning of life. So you may be very inclined towards religion and spirituality, and that aspect of life you must explore. See, there's a purpose behind this combination. Businesses require a philosophy. Every business needs to have a vision, what they are trying to accomplish. And I think that vision comes from this position, Jupiter in Hasta. You can't simply run a business only for the purpose of making money. You need to have a philosophy, and that is provided by Jupiter in Hasta, in my view. Jupiter is known to present opportunities, and therefore it's also linked to feeling optimistic. That feeling of optimism comes from Jupiter, and that is also somewhat linked to this nakshatra, this inherent belief that I'll return back home safely. So Jupiter in Hasta leads to the native being very positive and optimistic about life and the chances the native wants to take in life. Like we plan to climb the Mount Everest, we go to the base camp and we have this belief, no, I'll return back home. I'll manage the forces of nature. My body can sustain the troubles I'll have to go through. That inner feeling, that optimism, I believe, is also going to be seen in your character. This combination is an excellent one if you are expected to travel for business reasons. Jupiter is known to present such opportunities, and this combination also leads to business education. If you'd like to do an MBA, for example, and you are coming across Jupiter's Antadasha, then this can lead to you being an expert in understanding how a business needs to be run. And lastly, the purification of our intellect through knowledge is experienced in this planetary position. Like they say, the senses have power over the body, the mind has power over the senses, the intellect has power over the mind, and the soul has power over the intellect. So if you combine your soul to divine knowledge, you can purify your intellect and thereby control the mind and the senses. That power, that connection to divine wisdom, I believe, is linked to Jupiter Hasta. As I mentioned earlier, I find people having this position naturally inclined towards spirituality. When Saturn is in Hasta, you are going to take your time, you're going to make the effort to perfect your skill. You are likely to inspire people not only with the perfected skill, but also your journey. Like we hear stories that this person has achieved this and it's an inspiration, but look at the effort. The body of effort itself is an inspiration. That is Saturn Hasta. Here, unparalleled technical skills are met with Saturn's persistence. I had earlier given you the example of Roger Federer, who has Saturn in Hasta. So working on one skill over and over again until you find that you have achieved perfection, or the journey never ends. You continue to work on your skills, you continue to become better. That is the essence of this position. If business is likely to be your future, it's going to be linked to public service and social welfare, and the Rajasic side, so strongly linked to Hasta, is going to be very controlled. You're not likely to be as driven by worldly desire. You'd be naturally inclined to serve the society one way or the other, but you might do so with your knowledge of an ancient science or as a tradition, like your forefathers used to help residents of the village in a certain way. You have carried forward that tradition. Nothing's going to come easy to you. Everything you achieve with Saturn in Hasta, you'd say, I've worked hard for many hours, for many days, for many months, for many years, and have finally achieved it. So having one's future in one's own hands and being a self-made individual is what this combination is all about. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not only what you achieve at the end or you are aspiring to achieve, but your journey, your effort in achieving your goal is going to be extremely inspirational. That remains the main characteristic of this position. That's my view. Overall, I find Saturn Hasta to be a very, very, very strong position. The native can be very stubborn, but in a really good way. You inspire people with your stubbornness, your single-mindedness to achieve your goal. Rahu in Hasta can lead to you being an unconventional business person. Whenever there's Rahu, there's bound to be some convention of the society being broken, and this nakshatra belongs to the caste of a merchant. And since this nakshatra is very strongly linked to the healthcare sector, given Moon's rulership, you can be an unconventional healer of some kind, particularly if Rahu is associated with one of your career-related houses. Rahu is known to bestow the native with intelligence, cleverness, smartness, and this position in Hasta can lead to you becoming an excellent, very shrewd business person, salesperson. Major downside is that you may start running your business solely for the purpose of profits, for money. The Rajasic side can be uncontrolled in this position. The native may also delude oneself into thinking, I am running this business ethically, but the truth of the matter could be that the business was mainly run for commercial reasons. The native not only might delude others, but may also delude oneself, and that's something the native would need to overcome. Despite the shrewdness and the cleverness, this position can lead to the native having innovative, creative business ideas that can inspire people. This position can lead to business with foreigners or having a business linked to exports and imports. Despite the cleverness, this position can lead to the native making decisions, particularly in business, impulsively. And that is one of the downsides to this position. Altogether, the native would need guidance in life. The native may hold on to a business philosophy or a life philosophy which is wrong. The native may later realize, oh, I held on to that philosophy. I had the wrong purpose, the wrong vision. And therefore it would be very important for the native to seek proper guidance, particularly if the person is going through Rahu's dasha. That's my view. Ketu in Hasta can lead to the native seeking answers within. This nakshatra is a lot about spirituality, and Ketu is about isolations. Together, this can lead to the native being very driven towards spirituality, towards finding answers within. And in pursuit of that, the native may go to the extreme, which might inspire people, but in the wrong way. Like the monk who sold his Ferrari and started living in the mountains. Whilst that is inspirational, it's also impractical. The Bhagavad Gita says one must not abandon one's duty, and that duty is also towards one's family. So you need to find a balance. So whilst this position favors isolation and spiritual inclination in isolation, it may not always be the inspiration right for others. So you may inspire people in the wrong way. That's the point I'm trying to make. Ketu is known to bestow the native with piercing logic and with unparalleled technical skills linked to Hasta. Together, the person might be able to solve any complicated problem very easily. This position is excellent for the ones building their career in the finance sector, where you look at complicated data and you're trying to predict what might happen in the future. Ketu Hasta-like individual can solve such problems. Data analytics, career in statistics, business intelligence, such fields of work, I believe the native is going to be excellent at. This is an interesting position as Ketu detaches us from self-identity, whereas this nakshatra is all about doing things by one's own self. So there are two opposites here. So it might be that you prefer working behind the scenes, you prefer to be a ghostwriter, you prefer being a director than a performer. You prefer not being a public figure despite being involved in something meant for public, which can be a good or a bad thing, but it's likely to be something unique in your character due to this position. And lastly, despite the cloud of illusion both Rahu and Ketu can create in our lives, Ketu Hasta-like individual can rise on a spiritual plane. So if you have Ketu in Hasta and you're about to enter Ketu's dasha, you must seek guidance on how to achieve progress on a spiritual plane. That's my view. Hello, thank you for watching this video till the very end. If you have any questions, please post your comments, and if you'd like to stay in touch, please subscribe to this channel. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.